Good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to our first ESOL webinar of the week. My name is Fergus Dolan and I work for NALA, the National Adult Literacy Agency. We're delighted to have Simon McLoughlin. Hi, Simon.
Hi.
Simon is with the Balladreen Reception Centre and also with the Tuam Adult Learning Centre, and he's an ESOL and ESOL literacy tutor there. And this morning's topic is bringing social and emotional learning to life in the ESOL classroom. And just before we start, Simon is encouraging you all to type in your questions or comments or suggestions or ideas in the chat box as we go along. And then at the end, we'll go through those. So over to you, Simon, and all the best.
Thanks very much indeed. Okay, thanks, Fergus. So, welcome everyone. Today I want to just start, as Fergus mentioned there, with the chat. If you can, if you're up for it, if you've got the energy, just send me a little emoji there in the chat so I can get a sense of how you're doing this morning, if you're awake, or if I need to talk with great enthusiasm to wake you up a bit. If any emojis pop up in the chat there, this will just give me a sense that things are working. And also later on, if you have questions, you can post them there. Okay. Oh, I see a few things popping in there. That's great. And I'll come back to this idea later on as something to possibly use in class. All right, let's go on, and I'll give you a bit of an overview of what we're looking at today. We'll start with what social and emotional learning is and why it matters. Then, as you'll see, we'll go onto the 5 social and emotional areas as defined by Cassell, which I'll talk more about what that is as well. I'll spend a bit of time on some practical classroom tips, both things that I use, but also suggestions for things that you can use. Then I'll look at how this is also relevant for us as teachers or adult educators, if you will. And finally, I will share with you some links. I've got a Padlet with the whole presentation plus some further resources to look at later on. And at that point, if I'll answer any questions which have come up during the talk. So let's get going. It's not a particularly new idea, as this quote from Aristotle lets us know. Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And I'd say we have a lot of focus on the mind and how to get information across to students clearly, but the social and emotional side, while I'm sure we bring that to the class as teachers, it's not something which is necessarily focused upon, and that is the key of social and emotional learning. So I want to indulge slightly in a metaphor which will hopefully make it a bit clearer. At the start of this year, we had terrible storms, lots of trees were destroyed, lots of properties destroyed, yet some trees didn't fall over. And what is it that makes some trees stand up and others fall down? Well, these are characteristics which are also key to our social and emotional learning. Strong root systems, something that keeps things grounded. The ability to bend without breaking, the ability to sort of adapt to a situation without completely breaking. Good health, healthy trees that look after themselves, they stay strong and steady for longer. Helping each other, that sort of interpersonal connection. Trees will actually entangle their root system to ensure that they don't fall over, which is they really look out for each other. And finally, this idea of new growth, that if a tree may drop branches or something during a storm, but this will facilitate new branches to grow. Okay. So this works as a nice metaphor for the principles of social and emotional learning, which is basically helping learners to recognize and manage their emotions and the emotions of others, to build empathy with others, to communicate well, and to make thoughtful decisions. We'll go into this in a bit more detail in a moment, but I want to show you why this is important. And there was a major meta-analysis of over 213 social and emotional programs carried out. And on average, students who had been through this program got an 11-point gain in their academic performance. So the social and emotional grounding would help boost their academic performance, which is great. A follow-up study showed that these gains were sustained years later, and there was a 13 percentile point gain. So it's not just a short-term gain, but it can continue on. And this led to improved behavior, which maybe isn't as much an issue in adult education. A lot of these were carried out in secondary, the research, but also attendance and well-being. But in terms of our adult learners who are often juggling complex responsibilities, I'd say that this helps with motivation, emotional health, and just stronger persistence and a lower dropout rate. So let's briefly look at a quick history of social emotional learning. The germ of the idea started in 1968. There was a fellow, James Comer, a Yale psychiatrist and educator, who was working in a school in a place, New Haven, Connecticut, where there were a lot of behavioral problems and very poor academic outcomes. So he did some work with families, looking at relationships and trying to build grounded relationships that could support a stable environment for students. And this had a knock-on effect on the academic results, which improved. And it was the first large-scale proof that this approach was really beneficial. This went on, led to the 1990s. Maybe some of you have heard of Daniel Goleman, who I'll talk more about later on. He coined the term emotional intelligence, which was a way of he did a study at Harvard and noticed that did a follow-up study of people who'd done incredibly well at school and how were they doing later on, and found that the key indicators of someone's success later in life was this idea of emotional intelligence, how well they would interact with others and how effectively they could navigate the factors of social and emotional learning. He founded this thing called CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social and Emotional Learning. There we've got, like the Aristotle quote, we've got the academic side and the social and emotional side sort of working in harmony there. This then grew into further research in the 2000s to the 2010s. Is that the noughties, we call that time, where the evidence base grows. There's a lot of research, and basically it really supports what has already been put forward. And then that brings us to today, where we've got much more of a focus on trauma-informed approach and cultural diverse approaches to it. So it's there's been quite a lot of background leading to it. Let's now dive into the 5 key points of the CASEL framework and see what they are. I've illustrated them with images that will hopefully help them stick in your mind a bit. So this first one is self-awareness. So being aware of our own emotions, our own values, our own strengths, etc. Second one here is this is more an illustration of bad self-management. But yeah, if we don't effectively manage our emotions, they can erupt. We can have our Hulk moments. So it's effective self-management is a really key element of this as well. So the initial ones are focused on the self, but as we move to the third one, I don't know if you recognize, this is an image from To Kill a Mockingbird, and this is introducing the idea of social awareness, developing empathy, understanding different perspectives, etc. Then this builds into, I'm sure you'll recognize these guys, the idea of relationship skills, how we interact with others, building effective, collaborative and cooperative networks. And finally, quite a dramatic picture to illustrate the idea of responsible decision making. Which wire should you cut in that situation? Okay, hopefully we don't find ourselves in that situation, but what should you say in this situation? What's a good approach to deal with a potentially stressful social or emotional situation. Okay, so just to have all of those five together again, we've got their self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Again, I'd say that many of us are already uh, unconsciously bringing these elements into the class, but just to be aware of these and that these are skills that we can help students to develop just in a small way with small activities is, I think, a valuable contribution to our classroom work. Right, which brings me to the how this operates. As Fergus mentioned, I work at the Refugee Orientation Centre in Ballahadreen, where we primarily have students at the minute from Syria who've come from very traumatic backgrounds, and it's really important to create an atmosphere where they can feel well. These are key points that we want to emphasize in the classroom. Safety, a sense of safety and trust, and routine. I'd say those three work together very well in that we have an established routine in place in the class, so students know what to expect. They know that there's going to be the same questions at the start of the class, and there'll be the same type of activity at the start of the class. So they get familiar with this approach, and not only that, but in terms of, say, asking for answers from students, I'll go along a row from right to left and clearly indicate so people know, okay, Mohammed answered question 2. I'm going to be answering question 4. They have a bit of time to psychologically prepare for what they're doing, and it just, yeah, establishes this atmosphere of trust and safety. Once this is established, then curiosity can come out, a sort of almost a more playful attitude. If you're comfortable, if you're confident in the that it is a safe environment, then you can start to ask questions. You can start to play a little bit more with the language and the learning. And hopefully all of this creates an atmosphere of belonging, that students feel that they are welcome in the class, they belong to a group, and that they're interacting with each other, supporting each other. Okay. Um, uh, so we're going to move on to some tips. I've got 6 tips that I will give for you. And later, I will give you a link to a Padlet where I go into a lot more detail into how you can implement these at different levels and in different types of uh, in order to focus on the 5 different skills. This is it's kind of a simplified approach for now, but there's a lot more detail later on. Okay. So, first up, and as I did for you today, although we're not in the same space, to start with a check-in, to start with how people are doing. And it's something probably instinctively we do anyway in the class, just a how are you, but to really focus on that. A quick emotional or personal check-in. With some higher level students, ask about what's been one good thing or one challenge from this week. Or just a simple, how's your energy today? And this is sometimes nice to do at the start. How's your energy today? And how's your energy at the end of the class? And oftentimes that has gone up. And if it's gone down, then it gives us something to think about. Okay. But this builds a routine. It builds some empathy for others. And if someone is not feeling at their best and they can share that with us, it's a real trusting environment. I deal with people who have got very, very low level literacy skills. So it can even just be like the initial chart I had with emojis and a number attached to them or a simple word, and they can share this. From the social emotional learning 5 skills framework, doing this is a reflection of both self-management, self-awareness as well, and social awareness. We're sort of seeing how others are doing in the class as well. Okay, the next point like bookends. So if we start with the initial emotional check-in, we should end with some form of reflection. My image there is supposed to represent a journal, which is something you could do with higher level students, but just a simple question. What was easy? What was tricky today? What was enjoyable? What is something you remember from today's class? Hopefully it's related to language learning. Often it's a funny moment or something like this, but just to reflect on what has passed and yeah, I like this expression here. It closes the loop. It sort of brings it back. It's also very helpful for us in terms of navigating how the students are reacting to material. Are they finding it very difficult? They can voice this, and this in turn feeds back into what we are serving up in the next class. And this, again, is illustrating self-awareness uh, and, yeah, helping us tune into that with the students. Okay. Our next tip is to give feelings a voice. Often in a syllabus, feelings will be there as a unit. Okay, at Unit 19, we'll look at feelings or something like this. And yes, it's great. We can go into a lot of detail in our Unit 19, but I would say that they're such an integral part. When we meet and greet each other, we'll often start with a "How are you?" We'll gauge how someone is feeling. That in turn will affect how we talk to people, what type of tone we take, what type of facial expression we have when we interact with them. And these feelings are very, can be overwhelming. So it's, if we can name our emotions, it really helps. So yeah, encourage our learners to name emotions during activities. So if we're, for example, doing a role play, um, how do we feel in this situation? Oh, I feel nervous asking for help, or going to the doctor, I feel nervous. Um, and it's possible to or students may have experience of, for example, I don't know, going to a bank, interacting with someone and having dealt with someone who is angry or impatient. And if we can name those feelings and even role play dealing with someone like that and how we can stay calm and maintain our equilibrium in that type of situation, it's very helpful. And the emotional language that we build can support both language and empathy, understanding for each other. And yeah, we don't necessarily need to be using words. If we've got very low level students, we can just have images, simple facial expressions, um, and these can be an indicator of how we feel about particular situations. Again, this builds our social awareness and also our relationship skills. Um, all right, our next one, and again, this is something I mentioned with relation to my work at Balahadreen. There is safety through routine. The knowing what to expect up to a point. I mean, if every class is exactly the same, I'd say it's probably going to be boring. But if we've got elements which are going to be the same, and then I'd recommend putting these at the start and then being able to introduce new elements once we've sort of established that trust and safety at the beginning. So consistency, yes, it helps the learners feel calm, feel ready to learn. And if we begin and end the same way with our emotional check-ins, with our how was that today, our reflection at the end, um, it gives clarity and we can celebrate small progress that is made, reduces anxiety, and this is especially important for our trauma-affected learners. If people are going into a classroom having no idea what to expect and every day is unpredictable, they may not come back. So this, again, the social and emotional focus here is self-management, but also social awareness, understanding situation, and understanding routines. All right, our next point is to offer choice and voice. So I'll often start with vocabulary, new vocabulary, and I'll put a list of numbers on the board, say 1 to 10, and I'll say to students, choose a number and then reveal what that vocabulary word is. They don't know what they're choosing when they're choosing a number, but by just having that option, and they'll take time and go, number 7, okay? And it's a very small thing, but rather than me just dictating, we're going to do in order 1 to 10, it gives that students a little bit of interaction, a bit of freedom. So offer choices, work alone or in pairs. Which question do you want to look at first? Yeah, giving students a chance to do this. And again, I often link this back to the energy. So if at the start of the class, how's your energy today? Everyone's got very low level energy. Oh, I was going to do some listening first. Should we do the listening a bit later? Yes, yes. Okay, because of the energy, it's all connected. Also, this empowers the learners to express their opinions and their preferences, and this builds their confidence in order to also be able to do this out of the class. Again, it's stuff I'm sure you're already doing, but maybe not with the focus on this as being a key skill in and of itself. This builds to responsible decision making, and also self-awareness and social awareness, because they're not just making choices for themselves, but for the entire class. All right, and the final tip that I'm going to share with you is to celebrate connection and progress. With the focus tending to be on academic success. Oh, well done, you got a perfect score, you did well. Of course, that is important, and that's a key part of our job as teachers. We want to promote academic success, but we can also celebrate moments of connection, celebrate moments of progress. Last night, I had a student who was struggling with an activity. Another student moved over to help them without having to be asked. And it's just small moments like these we can often overlook. But to celebrate them, to give voice to them, I think is encouraging this atmosphere that we're seeking to establish in the classroom. So things like acknowledging kindness, teamwork, and yeah, I noticed Pedro was helping Juan there. Okay. I noticed that when you said you didn't understand, Monica came and helped. That's great. And by voicing you didn't understand, someone was able to step in and help. And that's really, really fantastic. And this can help with a sense of self-worth. It can help build community. And I sometimes would find in my past that I'd only be pointing out negative behavioral traits. But if you can focus on the positives ones as well, it's really helps to build this really positive environment, I think. So again, we've got here relationship skills and social awareness as emerging from these. Okay, this is just scratching the surface of approaches to social and emotional learning. But I want to next slightly flip the script. I'm going to get onto looking at how we can take this approach to ourselves as teachers as well. But these small changes do make a big impact, and they can sound like unimportant things, but I think if we don't include them, we can really notice a difference in terms of atmosphere. And I just highlight this point here. It shouldn't be extra work. It's how we teach. It's the approach, how we deliver the stuff. All right. I can't see the faces of people watching today, so I'm going to imagine that some of you are nodding enthusiastically and going, yes, this is. Some of you going, oh, I don't know, this sounds a bit touchy-feely. It sounds, I'm not comfortable doing this. And I'd say that's, of course, there's going to be a range of responses. And I'd really stress it's really important that you approach it in a way that is comfortable for you. some people maybe are, very into wellness and mindfulness and such things and would naturally be able to bring almost some elements of these into the classroom. Social and emotional learning at its extremes goes into things like classroom meditation and things like that for creating a calm atmosphere. That's not something I'm personally doing in my classes, but it's there as an option if that suits you and if that suits your learners. But it's got to be something that feels right for you and feels right for them. So yeah, use things if they fit, but if not, just aim for that steady, encouraging atmosphere and just be aware of the things, and give students the opportunity to give voice to how they're feeling, and yeah, how certain situations make them feel. All right. Um, I think I said at the beginning, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. But yeah, that's ongoing. So if after my profiling of you all there, if you do have any questions, just feel free to add them. Okay. Right. So next, I want to get onto the idea of why social and emotional learning is important for teachers. Um, and maybe you can identify with this image here, which is a stressed teacher. And there's a report by the Rand Corporation that says teachers report nearly twice the stress and burnout rates of similar professionals. Um, and it is a very social job. We're off going in, engaging with people, and if we're engaging with people who are traumatized and are bringing some of that to the classroom, it can be tiring. It can be exhausting to hold space with people like that. So it's really, really important to make time for ourselves as well. Um, that yeah, our calm regulates the classroom, and if we're not feeling calm, if we're feeling highly stressed out, despite our best intentions, we may not be able to create such an atmosphere of calm. So I'd say, yeah, the learner support starts with supporting ourselves. To this end, I would like to introduce three figures who I think are beneficial with this approach, who you may or may not know. First up is Kristin Neff, Dr. Kristin Neff, who's a big advocate for self-compassion. Um, Among my colleagues throughout my teaching life and with myself in the past, if something goes badly, if a class goes badly, I'll be prone to beat myself up and go, "Oh, that was terrible. Oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, why did you do that? That was so stupid." And the basic principle of self-compassion is to treat yourself with the same warmth, concern, and kindness you'd show to a friend. If a friend who'd had a bad teaching day came to you and said, "Oh, it went really badly," and you said, "Oh, you're an idiot. Don't ever do that again," your friendship probably wouldn't last very long. But we'll talk to ourselves in a way which is so much harsher, so much more critical than we would to even our worst enemy. And I include in the resources from Kristin Neff, there's a self-compassion survey, which you can take to sort of get a sense of which areas you're good at, which areas you're not so good at. And that also links to her website, which has several guided meditations so like very short ones, say 5 minutes or so, but which can, if you're feeling particularly stressed out, you can find some materials there that can help you calm down and center. I like this quote here: "We can't pour from an empty cup." So yeah, we can't share if we're not feeling uh, in the right emotional space to do so. So I'd really, really stress that as important. And if you get nothing else from this talk today, then please remember that point, because I think it's really, really important. Okay, next speaker, you may or may not be familiar with Carol Dweck, who has this idea of growth mindset. There was research done into what was it that made students succeed across various disciplines, and this was done both in schools but also in military academies and various places of education throughout the USA. And what was found was that the mindset was the really key thing. Those people with what was called grit, with self-determination, and just the ability to not give up, were those who were more likely to succeed. We contrast a growth mindset with a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset will be expressions like, "Oh, I can never do that. I'm not good at this. I'm terrible at this." And it's sort of defining our parameters, and limiting us. So growth mindset is more adding a yet. I can't do that yet, but building in the possibility that, okay, if I keep persisting, if I keep trying at this, I'm going to improve. And that's something that we often stress for our students, but we don't necessarily stress for ourselves. And I'd say that's also true for adopting social and emotional learning models into your class. If it seems difficult, tricky, start off small, and it should hopefully get easier. And if we follow that order with the self-compassion leading on to the growth mindset, I think it really helps to ground what we're doing. Okay. Next up, and I referred to him earlier on, is Daniel Goleman, who was a figure behind emotional intelligence. And as I said, he'd done a study at Harvard, following people up in 20 or so years after they'd graduated, and seeing, did the people who got the top marks have the best success? And success was defined not just in terms of financial success, but in terms of life satisfaction, and feeling good about themselves. So this coined the term EQ, or emotional intelligence, and that, yeah, our character, our happiness, and our lifelong achievement are really important elements in this. And that is really heavily tied to social and emotional learning, and our self-awareness, our empathy. They shape how we listen, how we respond, etc. But it's really important that we are modeling these skills for our students as much as we can. And of course, there's going to be times when we're overwhelmed by things, where things don't work as well, but we can voice that. Oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed today. I'm not feeling at my greatest strength, but uh, we're modeling the resilience as well. That's really important. So the threads again there from those three thinkers, from Kristin Neff: kindness to ourselves, self-compassion, really, really important groundwork. Then having curiosity about growth. How can we improve? How can we grow? What aspects can we be doing that will further our skill set and enrich our lives, both teaching and beyond? And then just being aware of our emotions and our emotional interactions. And these flow into each other. Mm-hmm. All right. So I am coming up to my next, which, I'm already at my recap stage. I must be speaking too much coffee this morning. Okay. These were the five. Do you remember what these referred to? Well, I'll put you out of your misery if you don't. They were the self-awareness, being aware of our emotional state; self-management, being better able to manage our emotions, take a breath, take a moment, do something which can calm us, or depending on what emotion is arising; social awareness, curiosity, empathy about other people, about other groups; relationship skills, building our skills and interactions with how we engage with those around us, both in terms of in the class and beyond; and then responsible decision making. With the basis of the previous four, it's easier to make difficult decisions, or everyday choices, even as they arise in our lives. Okay, I've I've got to my reflection and question section. I will also talk you through a Padlet in a minute, but I'll just pause at this moment and see if any questions have come up. Um,
Um, Hi Simon, nothing at the minute, but please feel free to add. Simon, I was very interested in the Christine Neff stuff on the self-compassion.
right.
Can you talk a little bit more about how is it advised to practice that or to change if people are harsh on themselves?
Sure, sure, sure. Yes, I can go further into that. Okay. There's I don't have one in the resources, but if you, there's a TED Talk or a couple of TED Talks by Kristen Neff, and there's several books which she's published. She offers online courses as well. I haven't yet taken a course, but I've read several of her books. She talks about self-compassion, that when we are feeling stressed or when we are beating ourselves up, we have a tendency to catastrophize to an extent, and we think of ourselves as being the only person who's experienced. Everyone else knows how to do this. Everyone else is good at this. Or why am I such a whatever it is? Um, and the principles of self-compassion are recognizing the universality of suffering. Okay, that it's not just us suffering. That everyone will have moments of this. Um, that also the how we talk to ourselves or how we interact with ourselves is really important, and this can also extend to physical touch and chill, like even just our brains will neurologically respond to any kind of touch, even if it's ourselves, just sort of stroking the back of our head, which you often see people do when they're stressed, giving yourself a hug, something like this. To our brain, this reads the same as if another person is doing it, and it can have a very calming effect. I'd say maybe choose your location for doing it, but it's something that can really help ground us. If we couple that with breathing, and if we're like taking deeper breaths, often when we're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, as I'm sure you know, we tend to breathe faster. But if we can take deeper breaths, particularly breathing through our nose as well as opposed to our mouth, we're getting filtered air, and uh, that physical touch and the slower breath work can really help to calm and ground us, and recognize that, suffering unfortunately is an inevitable part of our lives, but that it doesn't have to be dictating the script for us. It's part of it, but we'll accept it and do some things to comfort ourselves in the moment, and when we regain our strength, be able to deal with whatever is being thrown at us. All right.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I read out there's one or two comments.
Okay.
Miriam Naji said, I'm really enjoying your input. Thanks. Thanks, Miriam.
Thanks,
And
Miriam.
Una Clancy says, this feels very intuitive, and most good ESOL teachers probably incorporate a lot of this unconsciously, but it's really nice to see a framework and some literature review on it.
Yep, I would wholeheartedly agree. When I first found out about this about 5 or 6 years ago, I was just amazed at how much it resonated with me in terms of how, like, I'd approach this intuitively throughout my teaching career. And I put it as a question on the Padlet to think of a teacher who was important to you. And I'd find that most times, if you a teacher who was important will be someone who probably ticked several of these social and emotional boxes. And when I think back to teachers who I wasn't a fan of, it's often ones who would, I don't know, be shouting madly at the class or weren't able to control or facilitate a good atmosphere there, which would in turn leave students feeling uncomfortable, feeling stressed, and yeah, it's not the best. That might be a good point for me to segue to the Padlet and show you what I've got there. Yeah, so I will do that. I'm going to stop this share. Ooh, dramatic moment. Is this gonna, and start a new one if I can. One moment. Oh, okay, great. This should work. Yes, good.
Yeah,
Do that. Okay.
Padlet's up, lovely.
Um,
We can
uh,
share this after. Simon will send this to me, and I'll send it out to everybody.
Okay, so as I said there, we've got the initial question. Think of a teacher who made a positive impact on you. What did they do and how did they do it? PowerPoint, this is the full PowerPoint that I've presented today. Sorry, I couldn't resist a little interactive thing there, which you can completely ignore. But if you just wanted to boost your confidence about these different elements, you can do a matching exercise there on a word wall game that I've made. This is probably going to be of most use to you. This is a teaching resources database that I've put together, and it's if I can, is this going to work? Yes, great. Okay, I'm not, it's not going to open well there, but we've got different levels from like very low students up to, let's say, intermediate, more advanced, and different activities that you can do across the 5 different social and emotional learning approaches. It's not exhaustive, and I would highly recommend that you adapt to your own needs, to those of your students. But I do feel as I don't remember who commented it, that this is an approach that teachers are often already taking, but just to be more conscious of it and bringing it into the class, I really think it can help build positive environments which allow greater studying to happen. All right, some questions. As we didn't have questions, so many, you can look there at some possible questions or criticisms. I did some research because I thought perhaps under the current presidential administration in the US that there might have been a massive drop-off in social and emotional learning approaches, but apparently not. It's still widely practiced across the US. Uh, and there has been significant research as well into using it with adult learners, and it's recommended from primary up to adult learners, and just in terms of creating a positive atmosphere to learning. All right.
Simon, just one point. If any of you have read Katrina O'Sullivan's book, Poor, she talked a lot about one particular teacher who believed in her all the time and called to the house to help and encouraged her parents to encourage Katrina, and that made a huge difference to her life.
Yeah, yeah, it's as I said before, like we can really take it above and beyond. I'm not yet calling to the houses of my
Yeah,
students, but the principle and the idea there, I think, is really key. And it's the more that relationship in the classroom is based on these principles, I think the more students feel empowered and confident to explore more. All right, I've got some strategies for adult social and emotional learning. This additional resources section is probably going to be of most use. This is what I was talking about, the Kristen Neff self-compassion test. And that I really recommend doing this yourself. Prior to me doing it, I thought, yes, I'm very self-compassionate. And it turns out, no, there were 2 or 3 areas which I was seriously neglecting myself in, particularly when I would feel bad. I think, no one else in the world is suffering like me. Only I am feeling bad on my own here. And yeah, okay, of course, that's not true. There's at least 2 others at the same time. Okay. This is quite nice. Warm demander chart. I like that terminology. it may sound from this approach that I've got a very sort of softly approach with students. Oh, you're not feeling good. Okay, that's okay. But I push my students very hard, and I push them often beyond what they're capable of doing, but with a very gentle and soft approach. And I think by again, by having these foundations, we can uh, students will have the confidence to make mistakes. And I think if we're not making mistakes, we're not learning a lot of the time. Some further personal social, I can't remember what this is, but it's there for a questionnaire, I think, related to social emotional learning. Um, a framework for educator well-being for looking after ourselves. And then there's a couple of articles. This site, Edutopia, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. It's got a lot of articles on social and emotional learning there, and further information on research, etc. Um, it's not an exhaustive list, but hopefully there'll be several things there which will be of interest. I will send you a link to it, but if I just come back to my PowerPoint, I also have a link in the PowerPoint, so you can see there.
Yep, we're back.
Okay, great. So yes, this is the one. Okay, great. So that is a QR code for those of you unfamiliar with such things. And there's, yeah, if you use a QR code detector on your phone, you can get a link to that. I recommend then sending that to yourself, and then you'll have it, you'll have access to the Padlet, which I just showed you, and that's got all of that further information on it. Okay.
Simon, there a few comments that I'll read out.
Okay.
So Katrina Warren says, thanks, Simon. This is very interesting and how it can be both an approach to teaching and incorporated with the content to numbers, feelings, etc. adds to its value.
Great.
And
Thank you, Katrina.
Patricia Noonan says, I can relate to that support from teachers. That's what kept me in school, and empathy, which really made a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a few people like that. Miriam said the Padlet looks fantastic. Thanks, Miriam.
Well, thanks very much. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
lots of stuff on the Padlet. Um,
I'm a big fan of
so
Padlet.
if there are any other questions or any other comments there, please feel free to add them.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I have, yeah, to tie it back, and you may have noticed my sort of slight nature theme running through the talk, what with the trees earlier on. I really like this quote. I lived for 11 years in Japan, and I pretend I've got Zen ideas running in my head, but this from a Zen proverb: when one flower blooms, spring begins for all. Okay, so idea being, if this resonates with one student in the class and they grow, then that could be the start of a change within the class for everyone. We can have spring for everyone, and as the nights are getting colder and the days are yeah, the days are getting darker, this is a nice thought to have, I think. All right.
Simon, there's another quote or two.
Okay,
So
great.
Una Clancy said, thanks so much for the session, very valuable. And Miriam said, I thought the point about self-compassion was an excellent one. Tutors can be very hard on ourselves.
Yes, yeah, I would agree. Um, yeah, and I'd say I really recommend it for the students, but as I'd mentioned before, if there's one take home, please do your self-compassion tests and look after yourselves, because by doing that, I think you lay good groundwork for bringing that calm and into the classroom, and then being able to model that for students more. Yeah, it's all very well talking about it's really important to focus on social and emotional learning, but if we're running around like headless chickens while promoting it, I think it's not the best advert. So yeah, really recommend the self-compassion stuff.
Um, Simon, there's a nice quote here from Patricia Noonan in the chat box. Says, "When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower."
Great. I might add that as a little addendum to this. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Patricia, is
Yeah.
that from
Oh,
Zen?
sorry.
Is that from Japan? Go on.
It's
Sorry.
from, I just put the quote there. It's from Alexander Den Heijer quote. It was just in a recent workshop that we were in, that the facilitator brought it up. So it was really good.
Yeah.
But
Well,
this has
thank
been amazing. Like I used to work in the classroom. Now I work in professional learning development. So I'm more so looking at this as well for us and the way we plan workshops with staff as well, and looking at their well-being and all those kind of areas as well. So thank you. It's been fantastic.
Oh, thank you. It's yeah, I think the points are really applicable to yeah, not just classroom teaching, but yeah, how
Yeah.
we interact generally. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think the world could benefit from looking at some of these points, to be honest. But
Mm.
yeah, that's step by step.
Yeah.
Simon, there's another note from Orla saying, "Great presentation. Thanks, Simon. Good to take time and reflect. We're usually rushing around and don't give ourselves the time."
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And yeah, those reflection moments in the class and for ourselves as well, I think are really, really important. Yeah.
Okay, it just leaves me to say thanks very much for Simon. You obviously put a lot of thought into it and a lot of time, and it was really impactful. People really liked your ideas and what you said, and it is true, and it is nice that some teachers are doing that. But it was great to put a framework on it and give some new ideas, and especially the stuff from NEF, the self-compassion. A lot of people have commented on that. And it can, I think it's very true. Obviously, it struck a chord. And there's one or two more. My thing won't just move down to read the new comments. I'm sorry, but you could read them yourselves there if anyone can. Hold on. Um, yeah, people are just saying thanks very much, Simon. So
Okay, well, thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope, yeah, that no one's energy has gone down throughout the talk, if nothing else. But yeah, thanks
our
for
energy's up. Yeah. And as I said, Simon's going to send me on the presentation and the Padlet, and I'll send it to everyone who registered for today. Yep. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks a million, Simon, for the prep and the work and the nice, gentle delivery style, which made it very easy to listen to.
All right. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Have a good week.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, goodbye.